On a humid August evening in 2023, 73-year-old Clarence Williams walked home from his local grocery store in Atlanta, clutching a worn leather wallet stuffed with cash from his pension check. He didn't know a patrol car was tailing him, driven by Officer Daniel Hargrove, a man with a badge, a grudge, and a plan to exploit an elderly black man. Unbeknownst to Hargrove, every bill in Clarence's wallet was marked, part of an FBI sting operation targeting corrupt cops. What unfolded over the next few weeks would unravel Hargrove's life, expose a web of systemic abuse, and deliver justice to a man who'd spent decades enduring prejudice with quiet resilience. Clarence Williams had lived in the same modest brick house on Maple Street for 47 years. He was a retired mechanic, a widower, and a grandfather of 3. His routine was predictable. Every month, he cashed his pension check at the local bank, paid his bills in person, and kept the rest in his wallet for small expenses. He preferred cash, a habit from a time when banks weren't always welcoming to men like him. On August 12, 2023, he withdrew $1,200, mostly in 20s, unaware that the bills had been flagged by the FBI as part of a broader investigation into police misconduct in the city. Officer Daniel Hargrove, 38, had been with the Atlanta Police Department for 12 years. To his colleagues, he was a dependable officer, quick with a smile and a handshake. But behind the badge, Hargrove harbored a deep-seated resentment toward the black community he patrolled. He'd been disciplined twice for excessive force, both times against black men, though he avoided termination thanks to union protections and vague incident reports. Hargrove had a side hustle, one he kept hidden, shaking down vulnerable residents for cash, knowing they were unlikely to report him. He targeted elderly men, lone pedestrians, and those who seemed least likely to fight back. Clarence, with his slow gait and unassuming demeanor, fit the profile perfectly. That evening, as Clarence shuffled along the cracked sidewalk, Hargrove spotted him from his patrol car. The officer had been watching Clarence for days, noting his routine. Hargrove knew the pension check schedule, having overheard Clarence mention it at the corner store a week earlier. To Hargrove, Clarence was an easy mark. A 73-year-old black man, alone, carrying cash in a neighborhood where complaints against police rarely gained traction. Hargrove pulled his cruiser to the curb, lights off, and stepped out. "Evening, sir," Hargrove said, his tone clipped but polite. Clarence turned, startled but composed. He'd dealt with police before, too many times to count, and knew to keep his hands visible. "Mind if I ask where you're headed?" Hargrove continued, his flashlight beam lingering on Clarence's face. "Just home from the store," Clarence replied, holding up a plastic bag with a loaf of bread and a carton of milk. His voice was steady, but his heart raced. He'd learned long ago to keep fear out of his eyes. Hargrove stepped closer, his hand resting on his holster. "Got any ID on you?" he asked, though he already knew Clarence's name from prior encounters. Clarence reached for his wallet, moving slowly to avoid any misunderstanding. Hargrove's eyes locked on the wallet, thick with bills. "What's all that cash for?" he pressed, his tone shifting to something sharper. "My pension," Clarence said. "For bills, groceries, you know." Hargrove smirked. "That's a lot of money to be carrying around in a place like this. Could get you in trouble." He paused, letting the implication hang. Clarence said nothing, his face a mask of calm. He'd heard this script before. Cops fishing for a reason to escalate. But Hargrove wasn't after an arrest. He wanted the cash. "Tell you what," Hargrove said, lowering his voice. "I could take you in for questioning, make a big deal out of this. Or you hand over that wallet, and we call it a night. Your choice." Clarence's stomach tightened. He'd been harassed before, but this was different, brazen, direct. He thought of his grandkids, his late wife, the house he'd worked decades to keep. Reporting Hargrove would mean risking retaliation, maybe worse. At 73, he didn't have the energy for a fight. He handed over the wallet. Hargrove pocketed the cash, $1 220s, and tossed the empty wallet back. "Smart man," he said, then returned to his cruiser and drove off. Clarence stood frozen on the sidewalk, the weight of the encounter sinking in. He didn't cry, didn't shout. He walked home, locked his door, and sat in his recliner, staring at the wall. He didn't sleep that night. But what Hargrove didn't know was that Clarence had a habit of writing things down. In a small notebook, he jotted the date, time, and description of the officer. White, mid-30s, short brown hair, badge number 4723. He didn't know if it would matter, but it was something. Meanwhile, Hargrove felt untouchable. He'd done this before. Small shakedowns, never enough to draw attention. The $1,200 was a bigger score than usual, enough to cover a car payment and a weekend at the casino. He spent the bills freely over the next few days. $200 at a bar, $300 on a new TV, $100 at a gas station. He didn't notice the serial numbers on the 20s, didn't know the FBI had been tracking them for weeks. The FBI's Atlanta field office had been investigating police corruption since early 2023, spurred by a string of complaints about officers extorting cash from residents. The agency had seeded marked bills into circulation through local banks, targeting areas with high complaint rates. Clarence's bank was one of them. Every bill in his wallet had a unique serial number, logged in a database and traceable through purchases. When Hargrove spent the first $200 at the bar, a discreet FBI alert pinged. The serial numbers matched. The agency had their lead. Special Agent Maria Torres, a 15-year veteran of the FBI, led the investigation. She'd grown up in a neighborhood not unlike Clarence's and knew the toll of systemic abuse. When the alert came through, she cross-referenced the serial numbers with bank records and pinpointed Clarence as the likely source. Torres and her team began surveillance on Hargrove, tracking his spending. The TV purchase, the gas station, a $400 payment to a car dealership, all linked back to Clarence's bills. Torres knew they had enough for a case, but she wanted it airtight. On August 20th, Torres visited Clarence at his home. She introduced herself, showed her badge, and explained the marked bills. Clarence listened quietly, his notebook open on the table. When Torres asked if he'd been robbed, he hesitated, then slid the notebook toward her. The entry about Hargrove, date, time, badge number, matched the FBI's timeline. Torres felt a surge of resolve. This wasn't just about one officer. It was about a system that let men like Hargrove prey unchecked. Clarence was reluctant to cooperate at first. He'd seen what happened to people who spoke out, retaliation, harassment, worse. But Torres was patient. She explained the FBI's evidence, the marked bills, the surveillance. "We can protect you," she said. "And we can make sure he doesn't do this again." Clarence thought of his grandkids, especially his youngest, 14-year-old Maya, who wanted to be a lawyer. He agreed to testify. The FBI moved quickly. On August 25th, they arrested Hargrove at his apartment. He was stunned, insisting it was a mistake. But the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from the bar and gas station, receipts from the car dealership, and Clarence's detailed account. Hargrove's cruiser was searched, revealing a hidden compartment with $3,000 in cash, some of it from prior shakedowns. The marked bills tied him directly to Clarence. Hargrove's arrest sent shockwaves through the Atlanta Police Department. Colleagues who'd seen him as one of the good ones were forced to confront the truth. The union tried to spin the narrative, claiming Hargrove was an outlier, but community outrage grew. Protests erupted outside the precinct, with residents sharing their own stories of harassment. Clarence's case became a rallying point, a symbol of accountability long overdue. The trial began in January 2024. Hargrove faced charges of robbery, extortion, and civil rights violations. Clarence took the stand, his voice steady as he recounted the August evening. He described the fear, the humiliation, the choice between his safety and his dignity. The courtroom was silent as he spoke, his words carrying the weight of a lifetime of resilience. Hargrove, seated at the defense table, avoided his gaze. The prosecution presented the FBI's evidence: the marked bills, the surveillance footage, Clarence's notebook. Hargrove's defense argued he'd been framed, that the cash was from a legitimate source, but the serial numbers didn't lie. On February 10, 2024, the jury convicted Hargrove on all counts. He was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, stripped of his badge, and ordered to pay restitution to Clarence. For Clarence, the victory was bittersweet. The $1,200 was returned, but the betrayal lingered. He didn't want fame or attention. He wanted to live quietly, to see his grandkids grow up. Yet his story spread, covered by local news and amplified on social media. Community groups rallied to support him, raising funds to repair his aging home. Maya, his granddaughter, started a blog about his case, vowing to become a civil rights lawyer. Hargrove's conviction wasn't the end. The FBI's investigation expanded, uncovering other officers involved in similar schemes. By mid-2024, 3 more were indicted, and the Atlanta Police Department faced federal oversight. Clarence's courage had sparked a reckoning, exposing not just one man's crimes but a culture that enabled them. Clarence rarely spoke about the case. When Maya asked him how he felt, he said simply, "I did what I had to do." He still walked to the grocery store, still paid his bills in cash. But he carried his notebook just in case. And somewhere in the FBI's database, the serial numbers of his bills remained, a quiet reminder that justice, though slow, could find its mark. The story of Clarence Williams and Daniel Hargrove wasn't just about a robbery. It was about a man who refused to be broken, a system forced to confront its flaws, and a city that began to listen. It was proof that even in the face of power, one voice, backed by truth, could make a difference.